Let's get you right to Philadelphia. Our own Richard French is inside the convention hall with the very latest. Good evening, Rich.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Let me bring my guests in right now as they're continuing to do the delegate count here. We're joined by E.J. Dionne, of course, Washington Post columnist and also author of How the Right Went Wrong. Nobody believes me at home if they just watch the primetime speeches, but it had the possibility of getting ugly yesterday, both from what happened with the DNC chair, the rally that Sanders had where he seemed to lose it a little bit with the crowd, and even from the Rules Committee meeting. There was two different stories. There was a morning and an evening yesterday.
Right, I think there was a real break in the convention. Was sort of prefigured a bit by Cory Booker's speech, which went over well in the room and I think outside the room. But the real turning point was Michelle Obama's speech. I was on the floor, and the floor is a very loud place, and it came as close to silence as you get on a convention floor. And she made about as strong a case for Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump, but not in a nasty way, just in a very straightforward way. And I think from then on, there was still some booing. There's sort of in the back of the California delegation in particular. I've been joking that it's Petrograd back there, that there is some dissidence. And during this roll call, I love the roll call. It's like the most old-fashioned thing in a, conventions are in many ways obsolete. They used to be actually making decisions down there. But, people announcing their state and all the things they're proud of. There's been much more unity tonight. I was struck, for example, that the Minnesota delegation had Keith Ellison, the congressman who's a strong Bernie supporter, announce the votes for Bernie Sanders, and then Senator Amy Klobuchar announced the votes for Clinton. Now, I still think there'll be a little scratchiness among some of the Sanders delegates. But I think there was a kind of turning point last night.
A different tone, certainly, today.
Once those speeches started.
And I want to reference a piece you did today, and I think for folks who remember 4 years ago in Charlotte, Bill Clinton didn't just deliver a speech. He made the most compelling argument over those 4 days for Barack Obama than even the President Obama did for himself. And I think he termed him the explainer-in-chief. That said, what we heard yesterday from Michelle Obama, what we'll hear later on this week from the president for Hillary Clinton, you say it's more than just paying back a debt. You say that this might be maybe a marriage of necessity, convenience, or whatever it is, but it's a marriage of sorts.
Right. The Bernie Sanders ad that uses that great Simon & Garfunkel song, there's a line in there, "We'll marry our fortunes together." And I think what's so interesting, we talked a lot about dynasties this year with the Clintons and the Bushes, but these are now two political families who tangled fiercely in 2008. There was no love lost for a lot of that campaign between Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And they have found themselves by choice and for a variety of reasons as absolute and necessary allies. 4 years ago, Barack Obama felt he needed Bill Clinton to verify him, to be the explainer-in-chief. And Clinton gave this stem winder of a speech. I've always joked that Clinton fans are like rock and roll fans. They always like the long version of the song, and Clinton does the long version of the song. And that was important to Obama, and now Hillary Clinton needs Obama. But I think the other fact is Barack Obama needs Hillary Clinton to win, just as Ronald Reagan, way back in 1988, needed George H.W. Bush to win, because it ratifies his time in office. It means that his legacy is not immediately overturned. Obamacare would not be repealed, and I think by the end of a first Clinton term, even if that's all there was, it would be secure. So you have these two families aligned. And I got to say, I talked to a number of people. You heard that Michelle Obama speech for Clinton, and you thought, does she want to run for office? Everybody says she doesn't. But boy, was that a politically well-crafted speech.
So then the question when we leave here is, what do you do with Bill Clinton? You can argue one of the greatest campaigners around, but when he has idle time, sometimes it doesn't go according to script. How do you think he'll be used between now and November?
I think he'll be used somewhat more sparingly. He's also older. I think he's showing some wear, as we all do as we get older. But I think he'll be used possibly in more difficult places, particularly, we say, with white working class voters who are moving in significant numbers for now toward Donald Trump, but there's still a lot of affection for Bill Clinton in those parts of the country. And I think, the line Hillary Clinton's always liked to use is, if you're going to attack the 90s, what didn't you like, peace or prosperity? And I think among some voters, especially older working class voters, there's a kind of memory of, hey, wait a minute, those were pretty good times. So I think she will use him in that way, where a case where a little bit of nostalgia might help her a little bit.
Well, I certainly appreciate some time in nostalgia. By the way, Andrew, he's beaten us. He's been to 19 conventions, so no whining from you or me. Thank you so much.
Great to be with you.
Absolutely. And now we're very pleased to bring in a good friend to the program. Congressman Jim Himes is going to join us. So what is it, Congressman? Yeah, we're doing this ghetto here. We're bringing everybody in, exactly. Well, let me get your sense. Obviously, your colleague, the DNC chair, Deborah Wasserman Schultz, a really rough day yesterday. You can't be as removed as us, obviously, not only as a member of the party, but also she's a colleague of yours. What was your reaction how yesterday went down?
Well, it was obviously very tough. I think Debbie was probably caught off guard by the intensity of the Bernie kind of whipped up emotions, of course, behind those emails that were
especially in her own delegation, right?
Well, yeah, that was painful, right? Very painful. So at the end of the day, I think she did the right thing. I mean, the last thing, even late last night, you could still tell there was a little residual anger. I'm very happy by how this is going. The roll call has not been disrupted. But no, I think she was a little, as all of us were, surprised by the intensity. I think she did the right thing. I think it would have been pretty impossible for her to, be out here in a very public way.
And by the way, in the background of us, we've got Andrew Cuomo speaking for the New York delegation, obviously casting those votes for Hillary Clinton. One issue we're going to hear today, among the many, as Hillary Clinton lays out, or the argument for Hillary Clinton is laid out in terms of commitment to family, is also gun violence. You, and specifically Connecticut colleagues of yours, have been as vocal as anybody. In fact, I saw a very powerful, moving video that you were. And also, as a side note, this Friday, Newtown, a new elementary school, will be dedicated. To that end, what do you hope for, and what do you have a right, you believe, to expect if she is the next president of the United States that can be and should be tried to get passed through this Congress?
Yeah. So my hope really is that she prioritizes it as president. This is as we have learned, this is not a piece of legislation, the regulation, universal background check, even no fly, no buy. That turns out not to be an easy lift for the Congress. The president out there on a daily basis, early in her term, making that case to the American people, I think would be a step in the right direction. But sadly, because my district is a stone's throw from Sandy Hook Elementary School. This turns out to be the work of years rather than the work of months, at least at the federal level. But these things that we're calling for, we're not calling for an elimination of guns. We're not taking anybody's guns away. We're saying universal background check, limits on the kinds of guns you can carry. Those are reasonable things that if you just talk to the American people enough about, they will say, hey, wait a minute, that's fairly reasonable.
I saw some poll numbers, and we won't really have a good sense until the convention's over and a few days later how much of a bump, wherever we are. But of the issues that Hillary Clinton has to deal with, the questions of trust, the questions of likability, how baked in are those, do you think? And if you were a counselor, would you bother to try and change impressions at this point, or is she such a known commodity, it should be about competence and forget if they don't think they should trust or like you?
Well, this is one of those moments where if trust and likability are on the ballot, I'm pretty glad that she's going to be up against Donald Trump, right? And so here's what I think, sort of with my political pundit hat on. People have known Hillary Clinton for a very, very long time, 25 years, 20 years. They're getting to know Donald Trump. So my theory is that there is a core group of people who just want nothing to do with Hillary Clinton, and that probably goes back to the mid-'90s. Yep. There is a big group of younger people in particular, and let's face it, those younger people were by and large captured by Senator Bernie Sanders, and I think she can make the sale to them. Why do I think that? These are people who are very socially liberal. They are for marriage equality. They are for full LGBTQ rights. And I really think that she's got an opportunity there to win a lot of voters that today are standing still behind Bernie Sanders.
Finally, and I mentioned this to our last guest, the way the week started, or yesterday started to where we are now, have some of your Democratic colleagues had a little bit of a collective breath? Because this thing could have turned a little bit differently than the way it started, at least in the morning.
Yeah, no, a bunch of us were a little nervous yesterday morning, particularly watching Debbie in front of her own delegation. That was really tough. And obviously through the day yesterday, we saw, repeated demonstrations. We're not seeing that here now. Here you've got all the delegates on the floor. The occasional chance, a lot of enthusiasm still for Senator Sanders, but you're not seeing any disruption. And I think that's the key. Two things happened yesterday. The First Lady gave the political speech of a generation.
Everybody's saying the same thing. Republicans too.
Yeah, and that sort of reset a lot of people. And secondarily, Bernie Sanders, I think they call it a mensch, right? I mean, stood up and just said the revolution continues, but right now what we need to do is stand behind Hillary Clinton. And I think a lot of people listened to him on that. Look, you got a very small group of people who are who still are Bernie or bust. But look, the convention is a lot of enthusiasm. There's noise, but there's not dissension.
Good note to end on. Congressman, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Great to see you again.
You as well. Absolutely. And we spoke to a bunch of folks, including the never dull Anthony Weiner, former congressman from New York. We all know his story, but nonetheless, many opinions. And remember, he's married to Uma Abedin, who is Hillary Clinton's most trusted advisor. So he's got a background role here today, but certainly never shy on opinions. Take a listen to a conversation he and I had earlier today. First off, how close did this thing go to going off the rails yesterday? I asked that, obviously, given what happened with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. We also saw what happened at the rally with Sanders, at the Rules Committee thing on the stage, the competing chants. There had to be a sense behind the scenes it could have gotten.
Look, I understand. I see. You've got to try to find conflict. Let me finish my thought. You've got to try to find conflict because conflict is how we define so much of American life. That's really not what was going on here to any large degree. Democrats have a fidelity to making things better every single day. That creates a whole tree of different ways you can go. Bernie Sanders had some ways to go. Hillary Clinton had some ways. People on the stage probably had disagreements on the different ways to go. But this notion that we're tearing ourselves asunder is ridiculous. I mean, we're here. We're an organization that's trying to choose the strongest candidate to win in November. And we're doing that. Now, the idea that if someone is not happy of all the delegates that their candidate lost, I literally shed tears. I know it's hard to believe someone as tough as me literally shed tears when Hillary Clinton lost to Barack Obama. But I can tell you it's been 8 exceptional years for the country. So things aren't going off the rails or anything like that.
No, but in the mid-afternoon, there was a scintilla of doubt that it might have been a little ugly last night.
No, just how many conventions have you covered?
About 8 of them.
Okay, so there's always a little bit of something going on, but it's not like people were on stage.
I know, we were saying Cleveland was a hot mess. I think people were surprised at the beginning of the day how this was looking.
Dude, we are Democrats. If you have 5 Democrats in a room, you have 35 different opinions on which public option to choose. I mean, that's just the way we do policy. We have a fidelity to governance, a fidelity to having different ideas. But it's not going off the rails or something. You got to just turn it down a little bit. Right. Here's what we're doing. We're doing some very serious stuff here. And you're lucky you're going to get to be here. Where'd you grow up?
New York.
Okay. You're very lucky. We're going to get to see a woman nominated who's not just a woman, but the most qualified person ever to run for president. That's amazing. That is amazing. And on the other side is a xenophobic, anti-Semitic jerk. So we're not only going to get to make a president, we're going to get to squash like a bug someone who deserves that treatment. So these are big, important things. Whether someone is upset that we didn't have the public option last time, me, for example, that is hardly the top-line story here. Sorry about that, Chairman.
Now, I've been accused of being a shill sometimes for Hillary, but she's been very good to us as a station, and when she was a senator in New York, did a lot. I remembered Republicans lining up for her re-election, supporting her in the state legislature. Her staff stays with her, they don't leave her, and the rest. But you go outside, you know the poll numbers, you saw what in Washington Post, some of the negatives, the trustworthy issues, etc. You've gotten to see behind the curtain a little bit. Explain to people in your own voice the Hillary that you see that they don't see, and how much of that is her own fault because she can't communicate the humanity?
I'm not sure I buy it. Look, I just think if you're on the public stage for a long time, particularly when you're a Democrat
who's different with her, though.
Look, I'm going to do this answer. This answer I'm going to do is a solo. When you're on stage for a long time, and you have people coming at you every single day in a way that they probably wouldn't come after a man, I think you're going to have high negatives. If, for example, if every single day I get up on TV and said RNN was a lousy network, they can't be trusted.
How dare you?
That would be outrageous, but it would work. And in today's modern politics, unfortunately, that's the way that things get communicated. So if you're on the stage for a long time, if you're a senator, if you're a secretary of state, if you're a first lady, that's what winds up happening to you. But I'll tell you this, when she was secretary of state, 70% approval ratings. When she was a senator, 65% approval ratings, with Republicans lining up to take pictures with her and commending on her what an amazing job that she did. Foreign leaders saying that she's amazing to work with. When you do a poll of the most honored women on earth, where is she? Number one. No one on earth thinks that Donald Trump would ever finish in the top 250,000 in a poll like that. So that's the Clinton that we all see is the same Clinton. But when you look through the prism of a partisan campaign, you're going to get dinged up. There are some people who didn't like me when I ran.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
We are right now, say, toss up a point or two, he's up if you believe the polls. Are you surprised where we are right now?
Look, first of all, no disrespect to you, people read polls wrong. The polling hasn't changed all that much outside the basic fundamentals.
Well, you got a bump after
which
Cleveland.
is, but the whole point is you don't read polls as bumps are not things that go hand in hand with reading polls. You look at long-term averages, you look at where people are. The fundamentals that I look at, 70% of the American people, Democrat, Republican, we're unified in our belief that Donald Trump doesn't have the temperament, doesn't have the qualifications, and doesn't have what it takes to be president. That's the important thing. You cannot get elected in 2016 America being anti-Hispanic, anti-religion, being anti-cop, anti-armed forces, and all the other things that he is. Nice to see you, buddy. Take care now.
Andrew?
Rich, I get the feeling you're not going to be getting a holiday card from Anthony Weiner anytime soon.
I got to tell you, spoke to a couple other guys. He got along better with me than the other one. So, I can't begin to explain him, but he's never dull. I'll just say that.
You know, you were in the room last night, and so I got a couple of questions related to what we saw last night. Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, maybe to an extent Bernie Sanders seemed a little off their game last night. Was it your sense that some of the blowback they were getting from Bernie Sanders supporters might have impacted their speeches?
You know, it's interesting, and I've heard from so many people who saw it on a monitor, even in the arena versus in the room. Bernie Sanders couldn't have done, in my opinion at least, a better job. I mean, he had to navigate so many landmines, but at the end he gave a full-throated endorsement of her, but at the same time acknowledged, the support and really the unprecedented campaign he ran. I think he did as well as could have expected. Elizabeth Warren, for some, she was making the argument against Trump. If anyone laid out as a directed attack against him, it was Elizabeth Warren. I thought it fell a little flat, but not terribly. Cory Booker, I've heard reactions run the gamut. Some people thought it was as powerful a speech with the exception of Michelle Obama's. Others thought that the cadence trumped the substance. Either way, though, I get a mixed bag. But without a doubt, Andrew, every single person, even the Trump campaign, has acknowledged just how amazing a job Michelle Obama's speech was last night and how she was able to kind of reset the tone, if you will, like EJ said earlier.
If you needed any more evidence of that, that's the one person Donald Trump didn't tweet about. Richard French, live from Philadelphia. Rich, we'll have more from you throughout the week. And, of course, Rich will also be speaking with former Attorney General Eric Holder and Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe later on tonight. Up next, it is Bill's big night. We'll take a look at Bill Clinton and what he's expected to say as he takes the podium in Philadelphia.